Welcome, everyone. My name is Erin, and I'm here with DreamWakers for this very special DreamWakers Daily Conversation in celebration of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I'm joined today by Diana Clough, who is the Senior Program Manager at Twitter. And Diana, it is such a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of our questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay! Well, let's just start with your job because you have kind of one of those vague job titles that leaves a lot of students scratching their heads. So I'd love to hear in your words what it is you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. I think it also leaves a few of us in this world, in the senior program manager world, a little head scratching as well. But yeah, in short, how do I make this easy? So my job is to essentially come up. So let's say I have a project I have to work on, for example. I have to figure out the strategy and then figure out how to execute it. And so I need to think of who do I need to work with, who are my partners, and I essentially drive this vision that we come up with the contributing partners to basically make it a reality. And so a good example would be maybe if you're in a club at school, you raise your hand for a charity project maybe, and maybe you're the lead of that charity project, right? You have to think about, okay, what do we do as the first, second, third, and fifth step? What is it going to do for us long term? And then figure out who you need to work with and kind of make that happen and kind of bring in the right partners. And so that's kind of what I do in a nutshell, but it's for HR. And so my senior program manager role actually people in like engineering roles will have senior program manager roles, people in HR, like all across the business and marketing as well. So it really is just kind of like an all-encompassing type of role that just enables people to do programs well.
Awesome. Well, that makes a lot more sense.
I
um,
hope that.
yeah. So is this something you always pictured yourself doing, or what did you want to do when you were younger, and how did you find yourself in this kind of position?
I'm going to be honest. I wanted to be in fashion when I was younger, and I actually went to school for that. And I had no intention to be in HR or even in a program management role, but I kind of fell into it. I had a knack for, um, not to sound dorky, but organization and just kind of thinking ahead and thinking a couple of steps ahead to then say, okay, this is what we need to do, and here's how I bring in the right people and the right partners. And it's a lot of relationship building, which is really fun for me. And that kind of happened naturally. So I was in fashion, and long story short, I realized very quickly I didn't like it after college, and I found a job in tech, and the rest is really history. I just kind of kept taking entry level roles until I got to my senior program manager role.
Wow, really interesting turn of careers there. Very different.
For sure. Which is to say, you never know where your career is going to take you.
Yeah. Very important lesson that we always love to say here in Dreamwakers. Well,
Totally.
I'd love to dive into some questions that are a little bit more about Asian Pacific Heritage Month because
Sure.
these months that celebrate diversity and representation are just very important to us. So I'd love to start with your background. Your parents immigrated to the US, and a lot of Dreamwaker students are in similar situations, and we hear a lot about this bicultural stress, which is kind of the idea that what you're doing at home, the culture that you're celebrating, the traditions you have are different from normal, school, society, what everyone else is doing. So I'm wondering if you have had any experiences with that, and maybe if you have any advice for students who feel the same way.
Big time did I experience that. I am Vietnamese, and my parents were, I am first generation with them. And I went to a very predominantly Caucasian school. And so I was maybe one of five other Asian or even minority students in my whole classroom. And so it was a balance, right? For a while, I felt like I had to hide like my culture and the food that I loved. Like I loved some of the dishes and I never talked about it. I never brought it in for lunch. And kind of what brought me to realize like the importance of it is it's really age. And I learned actually kind of I wish I was more confident in myself in high school, to be honest, and more confident in my culture and more open about it. Because the more authentically you can be, I find now in my older age, I'm not that old, but in my older age, the right people will gravitate towards you, and the people that you want to be around will gravitate towards you. So I think it's really important for people to learn about different cultures, and I think it's really important for you to be open about it. So in short, yeah, I don't know if that helps answer your question, but that was a huge, huge struggle I had, and I still struggle with it today. But I think so, I wish I had someone to say, "Hey, be you, be confident, and the right people will come your way, and you don't really need to be fake about it. And if you do, then maybe you're just hanging around with people that don't value you the way you should be valued."
That's really great advice. Thanks for sharing that. Along with that, you were also a first generation college student, which I'm sure is not easy at all. A lot of our students, again, are in the same exact boat. They're in the trajectory to become first gen college students in their family. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for helping out those students who don't have the family resources.
One that's super exciting for those of you going through that right now. Yeah, so my parents didn't go to college, but I had other family members that I knew did, and so I really tapped them. I also tapped into like my best friends and their parents, and they were super super helpful. Like they kind of knew where I was coming from, and their families have been here for forever, I feel like. But yeah, just like reach out to your network. I think a lot of people want to help other students, especially in this time and space. It's such a big milestone. And I think this is obvious for all of you, but the internet is a huge help as well. And I wish I had that when I was that age.
Totally. That's all great advice. Well, I'd love to talk about students, especially high schoolers. They're feeling very anxious about what comes after school, deciding whether to go to college or not, picking a major, figuring out what career path they want to pursue. So I'm wondering, do you have any advice for those students who are just really stressed about their futures right now?
I'm just smiling because I was 100% in that boat. I didn't really know what I wanted. I think the fashion idea came halfway through college, to be honest. I thought I wanted to go into business. I tried that for a little bit, and then I said, "Hey, I want to go into fashion," and so I tried that, and so I got a degree in fashion. And long story short is, as you can hear me now, I am working at Twitter at a tech company, and my journey changed a lot. And what I realized though along the way is I was so stressed about finding my path and finding the right job for me that I kind of ignored the fact that I had talents in program management. Quite frankly, that's kind of like my calling, and I kept running away from it for probably years, and it just kept calling me back. So maybe it's just listening to like what you gravitate to naturally, and don't be scared to expose yourself to different types of experiences or jobs. Even it'll really open you up.
That's great advice. I'd love to pivot a little bit because we hear a lot about this term workplace diversity, and I'm really curious what your perspective on workplace diversity is and why it's important.
I am obviously a huge proponent of workplace diversity. Well, I think at the fundamental core, I think having different cultures and different perspectives really brings in different ways of thinking about a problem or even like a project. And so if you're on a team with everyone that has the same background or the same whatever, even if it is, Asian, black, white, whatever else, if it's all the same, you're not really bringing in that openness of like, what about thinking of it this way or that way? So diversity is so important. And I have to say, I'm really pumped that I work at Twitter. They totally focus on diversity, and it's not even artificial. A lot of my team is, I have a teammate from Israel and a teammate from so many different places. And anyway, it's just nice to be a part of and be accepted for your thoughts and who you are. So it's super important, especially for someone like me that's a minority.
That's really awesome. And I hope all of our students get to experience that kind of accepting workplace that's really just encouraging of being yourself and bringing your own ideas.
Same.
Yeah. So we always do a little Instagram stalking before these interviews. But I wanted to talk about some posts that you made actually about the movie Crazy Rich Asians, because at first you were hesitant, you had some mixed feelings, you ended up loving the movie, and you talked about how it was so important for you because, you've always wanted to see stars on the big screen that were major names that looked like you. Yeah. So I'd love to hear kind of how that representation is really important to you.
Oh, it's massively important. I think growing up, you try to have role models, and you try to like associate yourself to people that are like you. And I quite frankly never had that. I might have had one or two. I can think of. You guys probably won't even know what I'm talking about, but like I think her name is Lucy Liu from Charlie's Angels. but she was probably the only Asian actress that I knew of growing up. And even in musicians, I try to find Asian musicians sometimes that are in America, and it's really hard to find. And it almost makes you feel like you are not a part of the population, right? If you're not being represented and your culture's not being visible to others. And so there is that element, which is why I think when I was younger, I was a little bit ashamed of being Asian in a very like Caucasian population. But over time, you realize, and thank goodness for social media and just finding yourself represented in other places. There's so much out there in terms of content that you can like find yourself in and relate to that. And it's modern and it's cool and it's not like your grandmother's kind of thing. So I think just focusing on empowering yourself with those outlets that you can find is really powerful.
Definitely. And I think there's so much more representation as well now. We're getting all kinds of genres with Asian Pacific American representation. We've got Aquaman, we've got All the Boys I've Loved Before, and
Finally, I know.
Parasite. Oh my goodness, great, great movie. So this kind of actually leads into the next question because, growing up, were there any real role models or mentors that had an impact on your life and kind of helped shape you to who you are today?
That's a good one. Honestly, my mom, I want to say my mom, she came here at 6, right? And she had to figure it all out along with my grandmother and her brothers and sisters. And she became a super independent like businesswoman. She owned 3 of her own businesses, and I just saw her kind of like running stuff, and it was really cool to watch. And I think that's kind of where my drive came from, and my ability to like set the bar high for myself in terms of, I don't know, I'm not holding myself back and she always pushed like follow your dream and do whatever you want. Whereas like most Asian parents would tell you to like be this or be that. And so I got to explore a bunch of different kind of careers or even interests because she supported me and it was helpful for my growth.
That's really great. I'm so glad you have that supportive figure in your life.
Yeah.
So I'd love to pivot a little bit back to your work. I'd love to know what's the most rewarding part of what you do?
Most rewarding part. I know I said I ran away from HR for many years, but I really do love the fact that I get to help people like in the workforce. So we spend a lot of our times at work, right? And so how do we create the programs or experiences for employees that engage them and make them excited to go to work or even give them the benefits that make going to work worthwhile? So I don't know. I really cherish and I'm really passionate about people. And outside of even work, I just love just kind of like volunteering and teaching my kids about giving back where they can. I think just making sure people are always front and center has always been like my motive and my position. So I'm pretty much drawn to my job for that reason.
That's great. All right, we have time for one more question. This one's kind of
All right.
a fun one. If you could travel back in time, talk to your high school self, what is the piece of advice you would give to high school Diana?
High school Diana. I was super shy. And so I would tell myself to try more things. I think I always limited myself from doing things as I was super shy. And I was like, oh, what if I'm not good at it? But honestly, just do it. It'll be fun. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you like it and you're amazing at it, like you would never know unless you try.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. And Diana, thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of our questions. This has been a really awesome conversation. And for everyone who's watching, if you want to tune in for our future chats, they're always at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on our Facebook Live. And if you ever miss them, we have the videos on our Facebook page, and we also upload them to YouTube right after, so you can always see what our other Dream speakers have to say. But that's all the time we have for today. Diana, thank you one more time, and I hope everyone out there has a great day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun.